Alright, good evening ladies and gents. Welcome back to Compound Interesting. This is Emil, and in today's video I'm going to explain to you my reasoning why I've gone on margin to buy MicroStrategy stock. Alright, I'm going to try and explain these reasons to you in as short as time as possible. All I ask is a really quick like, would be hugely appreciated. Subscribe if you're new around here. So with all that said, I also maybe should give a disclaimer because this is quite a risky investment decision that I'm making today, and you should definitely not copy this strategy unless you really know what you're doing, and I probably don't know what I'm doing, so don't copy me. I just want to explain my reasoning, and this is my first time going on into margin, so if I'm making a terrible mistake, let me know in the comments. If you think my strategy is dumb, let me know in the comments, because maybe it is, maybe you're right, I'm wrong. Alright, so my thesis for using margin to invest in MicroStrategy stock is quite simple. So I believe that the inflation rate is going to be in the neighborhood of 15% per year for the next few years, as I don't believe inflation to be the inflation that the government tell you what inflation is. Any sort of scarce asset like gold, Bitcoin, stocks, real estate, they inflate way more than the CPI metrics that the government give you. The S&P 500 is another example of something that is inflated by the government's printing. So the real inflation rate for me is how much money did the government print that year. So in 2020, we know that the government printed 40% of all US dollars in existence in 2020. So my reasoning is, all things being equal, all those scarce assets should increase in price by 40% because they're valued in US dollars. So there's 40% more US dollars. All those scarce assets, all things being equal, using pure mathematical logic, would all be 40% more expensive. Trying to tell me otherwise is denying mathematics. If you look into macroeconomics even a little bit, you'll realize that the government have absolutely no choice but to continue printing money, because they have these enormous debt loads that they have to pay off, and the only way they can pay that off is by printing more money. So let's just assume for this video that they're printing 15% a year, and that's probably an understatement. So for my broker, I'm able to get margin at 4% a year. Now that's not a very good rate. I'm sure there's better rates, much better rates out there, but I can get margin without even calling them up at 4% a year. So if they're printing money at 15% a year, and all scarce assets then would go up by 15% a year, all things being equal, like I mentioned, if all those scarce assets, including stocks like MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, go up by 15% every year just from the money printing, not including anything else, and I'm getting interest at 4%, it makes perfect sense to take that interest and put it in those scarce assets that are going up by 15% and keeping the 11% difference. So 11% free money, 11% annual percentage rate on money that's not even mine. Now that's the simplified thesis, but I also believe that Bitcoin is going to do much better than 15% over the next year or so. I believe Bitcoin will double or triple over the next coming months, so that would be 100 or 200%. So I'm going to get a ridiculous spread in MicroStrategy stock on my 4% margin rate. The reason I'm using MicroStrategy stock to do this investment is because I can get the 4% margin rate to invest in stocks. I can't really do it to invest in Bitcoin. If I wanted to leverage up to buy Bitcoin, there'll be much higher percentage rates because I can't use the stocks that I own as collateral. On top of that, MicroStrategy might actually be a better investment than Bitcoin, than the underlying Bitcoin that it owns. It's already been outperforming Bitcoin, and maybe it will continue to outperform Bitcoin because it's kind of like Bitcoin on steroids. It's kind of like Bitcoin with a bit of leverage. So I'm kind of using leverage to buy a leveraged Bitcoin product in MicroStrategy. So extremely risky stuff, and this is just going to be a short-term play for me. So I'll probably be selling the MicroStrategy stocks that I'm buying on margin within the next few months, if everything works out to plan. But when is it a good time to buy MicroStrategy? Because it's definitely not always a good time to buy MicroStrategy. Let's dive into these charts and I'll show you the discrepancy between buying Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. All right, so here you can see the percentage performance between MicroStrategy and Bitcoin versus the Nasdaq. Yeah, it's the Nasdaq. So you can see that MicroStrategy and Bitcoin are pretty neck and neck for the majority of the time, but you can see MicroStrategy stock ballooned at one stage and went way overpriced in comparisons to the underlying Bitcoin that it actually owned. So you definitely don't want to be buying MicroStrategy when it's way overpriced like that, because it went all the way up to $1,300 and now it's crashed all the way down. At one point it was like 600. So I was trying to buy it when it was crashing down in the 600, 700 range. All right, so here's this chart of MicroStrategy versus Bitcoin. So this is a chart on TradingView that you can use to determine when it might be a good time to buy MicroStrategy stock instead of buying Bitcoin if you're interested in doing that. You can see that at the very start, so this only goes back to February, unfortunately, it doesn't go back further, but you can see the discrepancy of the price of MicroStrategy stock versus Bitcoin. It was really overpriced at this time. It was almost 2.5 times more expensive than it normally is. It normally hangs around at the 0.01 level. So one MicroStrategy share was, let's say, $1,000. So that would equate to Bitcoin being $100,000. Or 0.01 would also equate to Bitcoin being $60,000 and MicroStrategy stock being $600. So a good entry point is around the 0.01 level. That's kind of a fair point to invest in MicroStrategy stock, and it's always going to trade at a bit of a premium because Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy are always going to be buying more and more Bitcoin. The longer their company creates money and creates wealth, they're going to be shoveling all of it into Bitcoin, buying more and more Bitcoin with all the cash that their company generates. And they're also going to continue issuing convertible bond notes like they've been doing over the last few months. They might continue issuing them. So those bonds are convertible for stock in the future, and there are a lot of asset companies and asset managers that can't invest directly in Bitcoin. So this convertible bond, this convertible note is really useful for them. So I believe MicroStrategy will always, well, maybe not always, but should usually trade at a premium to the underlying Bitcoin. All right, so I haven't really talked about MicroStrategy, the company, at all, but if you want to go at a deeper dive, I'd recommend that video that I've done on MicroStrategy before. And if you want to know why I believe Bitcoin will continue to perform over the coming months, you can watch my last video on Bitcoin and why it will go to $1 million in a decade's time. So I do believe Bitcoin by the end of this cycle will reach well and above $100,000. So at least a double up from these points, probably in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 at the very peak. Hopefully I will have, instead of having to sell my Bitcoin, I will probably be selling this MicroStrategy stock as well. But I want to make it very, very clear that this is a very small percentage of my portfolio. As I'm using margin, I definitely don't want to get margin called. If you want to know more about MicroStrategy stock, the company, I didn't explain it at all in this video, but I'm just trying to keep this short for everyone. You can watch my last video on MicroStrategy stock there. And if you want to know why I believe Bitcoin will continue to soar over the next coming months and over the next decade, why I believe it will go to 1 million, you can watch my last video on Bitcoin just up there. So if Bitcoin goes up by 100% in the coming months, I'll probably cash out these MicroStrategy stocks and make 100% on money that's not even mine. Well, 96% if you include the interest on the margin. So if everything goes to plan, I'll be a happy camper. If not, I'll get margin called and I'll get wrecked. Let me know if you think that's a good idea. Make sure you liked and make sure you subscribed. I really hope you learned something. I really hope you don't get wrecked like I will. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Cheers.